Well, hello, everybody. Super excited to have you back again today. Today, I am going right back to the basics. And the reason I am is because I was having a little coffee chat with someone yesterday that I've worked with before. And she said to me, Tammy, all these people and all this work I've been doing, everybody keeps saying the same thing to me that while I was a child, I developed these coping mechanisms or skills in order to protect myself. And now they are no longer serving me, that I needed to stop the habits and stop using these same skills or coping mechanisms that I developed as a child because as an adult, it's not working. And she didn't know what that meant. And it kind of struck me as kind of odd because I feel like that was the very first thing I was told is that all of these things, all of these traits, all of these habits that I developed as a child have now followed me into adulthood and they are wreaking havoc on my life. So I wanted to just go back and kind of explain a little bit or give some examples of what some of these coping mechanisms might be, how they developed when you grew up in this chaos and dysfunction, and how they're showing up in your life now. And you can tell me if any of these resonate. I would love for you to drop some comments in there and just let me know. The first one is people pleasing. So, why does it develop as a child? Because when you are in fear, or when you are getting reprimanded, or when you are being neglected, you avoid you avoid conflict at any cost. You avoid criticism at any cost. You avoid rejection at any cost. And so you just do whatever you have to do to make the people around you happy. So you get into this habit of if things get rough, you jump in and you save the day. If things get tough, you give people what they want because you're afraid of that criticism. And it's also a way when you're a child, if you feel like if you're being neglected or if your needs are not being emotionally met, you feel like if you give people what they want, they will love you in return. And of course, we know that is not true, but we do it anyway as a child because all of this goes back to the fact that our little brains are too undeveloped to have the social emotional knowledge and skills to think through things. We don't know. We're just we're too young. We're too little. It would be like throwing math equations at a 4-year old. And for the most of us, that is not going to work. So what we do is we develop these patterns and these habits to get what we want, to get what we need, or to avoid the situations that we don't want to be in. So how does people pleasing show up in adults? Very, very, very obvious in so many people. And this might resonate with you. Do you have trouble saying no? Do you have trouble setting boundaries? Do you get burned out because you overextend yourself for everybody else but yourself? And then do you feel resentment from not getting your personal needs met? It's like a vicious cycle. And a lot of these things are. Number two is hyper independence. So, this is a perfect example of me. When I was a child, I didn't have anybody help me do anything. So, I developed this I don't need you attitude. I can do it myself. I don't need anybody. I don't trust anybody to jump in and help me. Um, I've always relied on myself. But when I became an adult, the trust struggles, the reluctance to ask for help and just constantly kept me feeling isolated and unsupported. I remember my father saying to me one time, Tammy, you are married. He is a guy. He wants to feel needed. Sometimes you just need to make him feel needed. And my exact response right away, right off the cusp was, I don't need him to do anything. I live by myself all this time. I can do it. I got this. I don't need him. And I remember my dad saying, if you want to have a marriage and you want to make it last, let him feel needed and appreciated. Let him do things for you. And that was so, so hard for me. So that's another one. Another one is just avoidance of emotions in general. Many of you were told it's not okay to feel emotions or express emotions. Sometimes that was unsafe because you got in trouble if you were crying, you were a crybaby, or you were told to suck it up, or you were reprimanded, or sometimes even physically punished. And a lot of times it was just dismissed. So if you were sad or angry or lonely or fearful about something, your needs weren't met anyway. So you quickly learn that expressing those emotions didn't help you. So you don't show. express them growing up. So how does this show up when you grow up? You can't connect with those emotions. You shut down during conflicts. You don't want to feel the big emotions. A lot of times you just numb out, you dissociate. That is a big one too. I see that a lot of times with children that grow up in these chaotic households. Um, you don't express, you avoid those emotions. And how does that show up as an adult? Sometimes you overeat, you binge eat, you stress eat, you overwork, you turn to substances, anything you can do to not have to feel an emotion. Another one is conflict avoidance. Again, that goes part of the safety issue of growing up in these chaotic households. If you avoided conflict at any cost, it made you think that it made that chaotic environment a little more peaceful. And so you avoided disagreements. Even though you knew and you felt in your heart of hearts that you were right, you never said you were right. You just went ahead and believed what everybody told you. So, how does that show up in adulthood? You avoid many of the necessary conversations that go along with being an adult. So all these unhealthy things, they persist and eventually they're going to overwhelm you. They're going to shut down your voice completely and you're going to be a shell of a person. You eventually get to be like, you won't get into any conflict. And so you retreat. And once we start retreating, we start suppressing more. Again, it goes back into this vicious cycle of what we do. And it's just not good for you. So that's a tough one, though. That's a tough one when you're an adult and you start trying to do that. So, like arguing back or saying what you believe, even though you know it's going to be a conflict, or telling somebody at work if you're in a leadership position that they're not doing something correctly. I mean, what do? Let's think about this, guys. If you are in a leadership position at work and there is a conflict or something that is being done differently, I would venture to guess that a lot of you out there just go and do it yourselves because you don't want the conflict. But conflict and conflict resolution is part of emotional intelligence. It's part of growing up. It's part of knowing how to have a conversation with somebody that you're in a relationship with and then successfully work it out instead of shutting down. The next one is overachieving. So, why do we in these chaotic households as children tend to overachieve? A lot of the same reasons. I remember thinking if I could just get straight A's, my parents would be so proud of me. They would love me more. I remember, if I was the captain of the diving team, my mom would go to my diving meets. But if I wasn't, she wouldn't. And so I had this constant need to be the best at everything I did. I thought that the only way I could gain approval was by my performance. So I overperformed in everything I did. Now, how does that show up as an adult? Perfectionism, workaholism, thinking that your self-worth comes from your accomplishments. So you're always trying to be the best, be 100%, be top notch. And if you aren't, it leads to that chronic stress. It leads to burnout. It leads to just resentment and guilt about everything you do because you want to be the best at everything and you think you have to be loved. I remember as an adult, oh gosh, it was, I think I was probably 28 years old, was the first time I ever remembered doing something and I knew it was bad. It was the first time I was learning a new thing and I knew I was bad at it. And the person that was involved could see my stress. They could see my tension about having to do it perfectly. And I remember when they came up and all they said to me was, Tammy, it doesn't have to be perfect. I love it anyway. And just those words gave me such a relief. Like it didn't have to be perfect and somebody was actually going to love it and love me the same was so liberating for me. The next one is hypervigilance. So, and we talk a lot about this. So, if you have not heard me talk about this in a podcast, you can go back to just about every single episode that I ever made. And we talk about hypervigilance. We talk about being in that unpredictable environment and your head being on constant spin, ready for something to happen, ready for a potential threat, ready for something to be unsafe, ready to have to change your mood and literally change who you are and how you act at the drop of a dime because things are going on around you that you can't control. So as an adult, you grow up anxious, you have trouble relaxing, trouble sitting still, you have trouble with interactions, and you're always looking for potential risks because a lot of times those risks actually played themselves out. The next one is another big one, and I'm sure many, many, many people out there listening can resonate with this one. It is minimizing your own needs. So when you are a child and you're growing up, you learn to suppress your needs. You learn to not ask for anything because a lot of times either you were reprimanded, punished, made fun of, whatever it was, or you they were ignored. Those needs were completely ignored or told they weren't important. And so you start to minimize your own needs. So as an adult, you neglect self care. You have difficulty advocating for yourself. You feel unworthy of love and attention. And a lot of times that leads to the chronic stress, the chronic burnout. And a lot of times you just don't feel your needs are important. So you can literally go through your entire life and you give, 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 give. But when you want something, you will never, never ask for it. And what does that do? It makes you resentful. It makes relationships hard. All of this, I'm telling you guys, because if you can get to the root of some of this and you can understand that all of this happened because of how you grew up, but you're not in that situation anymore, and you can start to change those habits, it will be better for your relationships. It will be better for work. It will be better for your health. It'll be better for your psychological situation. It'll be better for everything. And this is why, like I said, this is why I want to share this episode with you. The next one is codependency. And there are many, many people out there that literally do nothing but coach on codependency. There's codependency anonymous groups, there's support groups, all kinds of stuff. And basically, what that means and is that you ought literally become addicted to taking care of everybody else but yourself, especially when there is a household with addiction or mental illness. Your caretaker roles, they get established at a very, very, very young age. And your happiness now becomes dependent on everybody around you, on their happiness. So, what does that look like as an adult? You are going to sacrifice your own needs and your own well being at the expense of other people every chance you get. So, you're going to prioritize everybody over yourself. I always just say it's like being addicted to other people. It's being, you lose a sense of self and you literally live to make sure that everybody around you is happy. So if I say to someone who is complete like in a codependent relationship with their parent or their spouse or their child or whatever it is, and I say to them, "How are you feeling today?" The first thing that will pop into their mind is literally how that other person is feeling, not how they're feeling, but how the other person feels, because that is how they base their day is on how other people are feeling. And again, once you can break free from this and that you can understand that just because X, Y, or Z is having a bad day doesn't mean that you have to too, you will be so much happier. And again, this is not an easy step. These are just bullet points, literally bullet points, because any single one of these things could take weeks or months, if not years, to really get to the bottom of it, really dig down. And that's what we do. We do an entire week on talking about, in my course, on talking nothing about nothing other than codependent relationships and how you can start to break free from them and how you can nurture yourself and how you can care for yourself and boundaries you can set and all of the things that go along with codependency. So again, when I talk about some of these things, it seems so superficial. And I'm not saying to you, 1 through 10, here's the steps on the patterns that you developed. And it's that easy to turn them off because it's not. But what I want to do is give you kind of an understanding and see if you do resonate with some of the stuff. Because if you resonate with some of the stuff, there might be a codependency support group out there that you might love. One of my clients just started a codependency support group and she absolutely loves it. And all of the stuff that we talk about, it kind of reinforces. And then she goes there and there she's like, oh, now I really get it. So I, again, just tips and tricks. I just want to give you an outline, kind of let you explain, let you understand why you built these habits. You know why you all of a sudden start taking care of needs, if you people's needs, if you were taking care. I was talking to a lady the other day and we were talking about how I remember holding my mother's hair back while she was vomiting and I was 8 years old. So first time I drank, there was no one there to hold my hair back. There was no one there to do that. But I was still worried about the other people. Even when I was in a bad situation, I would continually worry about the other people involved. Anyway, so that's codependency. And like I said, I think I went off on a tangent on that one because I could literally talk for years and years and years on just nothing other than codependency. The next one is black and white thinking. When you live in a chaotic household, extremes are the norm. So you have this very intertwined, there's no like gray area. It's either black or white. You're either right or you're wrong. You're either good or you're bad. You're either evil or you're not. I mean, there's no gray areas. So a lot of times when you grow up and you are used to this, having flexibility in thinking is a little difficult because there are no gray areas. So you have to start to understand that things might not be all good or all bad, or you're not all good or all bad. So that's just one of those nuances in relationships that are very difficult because you tend to have an all or nothing, black or white thinking. And the last one I'm going to talk about is a suppression of your authenticity. So this, again, I could go on for days about the masks we wear when we grow up in a chaotic family. You literally, the first time I went to therapy and someone said to me, "Who are you?" And I was like, "I'm whatever you need me to be. I'm whoever you need me to be. I can be the charismatic, happy person. I could be the sad, depressed person. I can fit into any crowd and literally mirror and mimic and slide right in, put on that mask and be anybody you need me to be." I did that because I wanted to avoid punishment. As I got older, I did that because honestly, I didn't know who I was. So I was just whoever I was around. It was like being a chameleon almost. So I would change colors to fit in with whoever I needed to be. And a lot of times that is a very hard habit to get out of because you don't want to be yourself. You have this fear of vulnerability. If I was like everybody else in the crowd, I wasn't vulnerable. I was afraid people, if they got to know the real me, that they wouldn't like me. So you stay, if you stay with this lack of authenticity, you literally disconnect from your own identity. And again, if you work with me or if you go through any of my courses, we spend a lot of time on reestablishing that sense of identity. And I think it's very important. All of these things are very important. But again, this episode is nothing more than to just give you an example of how some of these things occurred. And one of the ways you can kind of see if you do resonate with some of this, if nothing I've said really pops out and you're like, oh yeah, that's me. But just ask yourself, go back to a time where something happened when you were a younger child, whether it was something that happened with your parents or your brother or your sister or something that really stands out to you, and ask yourself, how could this have changed how I act today? Like, what belief could this have instilled in me that changes the way I step out in the world today? And I think that you will find that if you just ask yourself hypothetically, like, or picture another child having this done to them and say, what could it have made them do to survive at the time? And kudos, if you're standing here right now, you survived. So you did everything you had to do in the situation you were in. So I commend you for that. But I want you to look at that other person or look at yourself as a younger child and ask yourself, what could this have made me believe and gotten so ingrained in my belief system that I'm still holding those feelings today? And I think you will find out a lot. So, what are some steps? 6 major steps I can think of. First one is just being awareness. Understand now, after listening to this, you might be able to make a little list of these coping skills that no longer serve you and understand where they came from. Second thing is find a support group, whether you're working with a coach, a therapist, um, whoever you are, work with some kind of a support group. My specific training is being a trauma informed ACOA coach. So those are the people that I work with. But you can go to therapy. You can just do a talk group. You can just join a group of friends that have all been there, whatever it is, Al-Anon, ACOA meetings, whatever they are. But work with someone that specializes in trauma so that you know that they understand where you're coming from, because some people will not. I remember my very first client, she said to me, Tammy, I've been going to therapy for 18 years or 11 years. And I've given this woman $110 a week for 11 years. And literally in 18 minutes, you told me more about why I am the way I am. And it's because I was her. I was her many years ago. So it's very important when you're picking a support group or picking a coach or picking a therapist that you find someone that can relate, that can resonate, that knows where you're at, and so that they can help you from where you are right now. Next thing, boundaries. And this is huge, but boundaries are really the foundation of all relationships. So you need to learn how to practice setting boundaries, how to maintain healthy boundaries, and to help the people that are in your world live with those boundaries. And the most important thing, and I'm again another topic I could go on for hours and hours and hours and days and days and days, is boundaries. But just know right now, as you're sitting here, if you're new to this whole journey, that they are not to harm the other person, they are to protect you. So as long as you know that and you keep that in your mind, that you're not setting a boundary to punish someone, you are literally setting a boundary to protect yourself and actually to help them as well. So I want to, that's side note. Next one is practice self-compassion. Be gentle with yourself. And once I throw these things at you, I know every time somebody throws me a list of things like, oh, these are 10 traits you could have as an adult child, and these are 13 of these, and these are that. I literally resonate with every single one on the list every single time. And I've had to learn to be very compassionate with myself about that, because you can't undo 50 years of patterns in a day. So be gentle with yourself. Work on one thing at a time. Um, build, you're going to start building healthier habits in exchange for those bad habits that you've developed. And it does take time. So celebrate your small wins and love on yourself more than you ever thought you could. Next one is connection. Make sure that you have a supportive network of people who value your feelings and encourage your growth. If they are toxic in your world and they do not support your forward growth, I know this sounds harsh, but you may need to limit the time that you spend with them, because what you think about, you bring about. And the people that you hang with and the vibe that you get on a daily basis, it's what's going to stay stuck in your mind. So you want to find people that will support you. You want to find people that understand. And even if they don't understand, you want to find people that try to understand or have empathy towards your situation, even if they don't understand, or they can be compassionate with you. But again, part of growing a lot of times is changing relationships. And as you heal and as you grow, your relationships will change and the people that are in your life will change. And that is part of life. It is part of the cycle of life. So embrace it and know that I have people that have come in my life and then they're gone. And I just try to look at why were they in my life and what did I learn from it? And what did I gain from that relationship in a positive way when it was going on? So don't beat yourself up about feeling guilty about not wanting to be with toxic people, because that's your choice and you don't have to be. And the last thing I'm going to talk about, and this is so, so near and dear to my heart, is do inner child work. Grab yourself an inner child notebook, work with an inner child coach, grab my course and really, really, really dig into the articles and the videos and the journaling that goes along with inner child work, because revisiting the unmet needs from childhood and nurturing your inner child with love and care is going to be so foundational in any growth and any journey that you take. I can't say enough about inner child work. I absolutely love it. But anyway, that is a lot. I said a lot to really say a little, but really, I just want you to be self-aware. That's, like I said, that's number one. But start to think when you do something, start to think about how that may have come about that you do that. Or start to think back to situations in your childhood and how they may have affected your thought patterns and the way you act, because this is what's happening. This is why you will hear people say when you react or you overreact, you're dealing with your 5-year-old self, or you're coming from your 5-year-old self. It's the beliefs, the patterns, the actions, the thoughts, and the emotions that went along getting back in that time that have carried through into our adulthood. But the good news is, guys, all of it can be all of it can be made better. All of it can be changed. All of it can be rewired. Anything that you, once they learn that your brain is not stagnant, that once you learn something, it can't be unlearned, the world was your oyster, because now you can relearn all of those patterns. You can rewire all of those negative beliefs. You can literally live the best, most joyous, most authentic life you have ever imagined. And it can start right now. It can start today, January 8th or January 7th or whatever day it is, it can start. So that's all I wanted to say today. Thank you guys for listening. I do want to mention something else. With every podcast, I realized I was making a book list for 2024 of all the books I read. And it dawned on me that I read hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of books. So I made a promise to my listeners and to my people that are in my little group, and that with everything I do and with everything I teach, I will give some suggested reading material along with it. So a suggested book, a suggested article, something that you can read to get a different perspective on it or to learn a little bit more about it. So if you have time at any time going forward, check out the show notes, because there will always be suggested readings attached to the show notes that you can get your hands on. And it's powerful information. Some of the books have literally changed my life, and hopefully they can change yours. So that's all I wanted to say. And you have a blessed day, and we will see you back next week. Bye.